So have you ever thought about the differences between two guitars like the Fender Stratocaster and the Gibson Les Paul? They're both solid body electric guitars, but that's sort of where the similarities end. This is a bolt neck, this is a set neck, this is mahogany and maple, this particular Strat is alder. This has 3 single coil pickups, this has 2 humbuckers. And if you've ever played or you own 2 of these guitars, you know how different they feel to play. And a huge part of that difference is down to something called scale length. So in today's video, we're gonna head over to Righteous Guitars, where we're gonna meet up with my friend Ben Calhoun, the co-founder of Righteous, and we're gonna learn all about scale length and try and figure out, does it really matter? Which is better, a longer scale guitar or a shorter scale guitar? And how do you find out which is better for you? So I'm gonna put these back in the rack. We're gonna pack up and head over to Righteous and see what we can find out. Ben.
Yes.
What is scale length?
It's the distance between the nut and the saddle of a guitar. It's the length of the string.
All right, cool. Video's done.
Sweet.
Thanks, man.
That was good.
See you
All
next
right.
week. All right. No, but for real, we're gonna get in depth on scale length today because it actually has a pretty big impact on the feel of the guitar, the way it plays, the way it handles, and some people think it affects the sound, but
yeah,
we'll get into that.
Well, scale length affects a lot of things, including, like you mentioned, the feel of the guitar. It does affect the sound to some extent, but the idea of it is the longer your scale is, the more tension that you will need in order to be at the same pitch. And a lot of times when I talk about this with people to kind of describe it, if I, hit a nail into the wall over there and I take a string or a piece of cord or something and I pull it tight right here and try to make a note with that, so, whatever pitch. The amount of effort I have to put in to do that from this distance, if I walk really close and do the same thing, I barely have to do anything to get that same result. So because of that, if you take a guitar with a longer scale length, it will feel stiffer compared to one with a shorter scale length, which may be easier to bend on and feel a little slinkier. So, and I know that that's been a thing for most guitar players. Have gone into a shop and you go, hey, what does this thing got on it? 9s or something? And it doesn't. It has 10s on it, but it just feels slinky. Shorter scale length, more than likely. Conversely, if you've ever played a Fender or like a Telly, I know that used to be people would say Telly sometimes feels stiff or they fight you a little bit, and largely that is a scale length. The most common when we're talking about electrics, which is primarily what we're talking about here, you got your Fender style guitar or bolt-on guitar, which is 25.5 inch scale. So that's 25.5 inches from here to here. The 12th fret being the midpoint, the halfway point, which is why intonation and everything is set around there. So when you look at a Fender, that's what you've got going on. If you look at a Gibson, it's typically 24.75 of an inch from here to here on a Gibson. So it's shorter scale, less tension.
So I just did the math wrong, but basically the main difference between your typical Fender Strat and a typical Les Paul, for example, is just 3/4 of an inch.
Scale-wise, yeah, that's it.
That doesn't sound like that much.
It doesn't.
But it's huge.
It makes a difference, for sure. If you look at another builder, Paul Reed Smith. So if you look, actually, we look at Fender, Gibson, and Paul Reed Smith. I think those are 3 of the larger electric guitar manufacturers out there. And Paul Reed Smith went with a 25-inch scale. And a big part of that was because a 25-inch scale just has a bit more tension than 24.75. It actually can help when you're using a lighter gauge string to try to get the intonation right. But if you have a Les Paul with 10s on it and you have a Strat with 9s on it, they're probably not going to feel that far apart when you bend. And that's because the tension is different. So now what we're actually going to do is grab 3 different guitars. We're going to grab a Telecaster, the typical Fender scale length. We're going to grab a Les Paul with the typical Gibson scale length, and then we're going to grab a hardtail PRS with the 25-inch scale length, and actually just play the 3 of them back to back. Now, keep in mind this is not going to be a sound difference comparison because we're comparing 3 completely different instruments, but what we're going to try and do is describe for you and show you the differences in the feel and the playability of the guitars that have the same gauge strings on them. The primary difference that we're going to be focusing on being the difference in scale length. They're all going to be hardtail guitars, no tremolos. Plug up into an amp over here and have some fun. Yeah, it's not enjoyable. Yeah, I don't really. Oh yeah, that'll be fun. I almost feel like I rather.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting comparison to make. Like, we've got 3 completely different guitars in almost every way. But, you know.
3 different types of bridges.
Yep.
Okay, 3 different scale lengths. 3 very different guitars. But this one's cool, dude. I mean, check out, it's got the Robson tuners on it. This was the introduction of the Paul's guitar pickups. Comes with a ton of paperwork. It's like all like Joe Walsh and all these other people saying how awesome this guitar and pickups are.
That's cool.
It's a neat guitar.
Wait, what year is this thing?
2011.
Oh, okay. Oh, 10 years old.
Yeah. Pretty sweet little guitar. And then we've got a 58 reissue. Really sweet guitar just came in. Nice dark fingerboard.
Custom shop?
Yeah, it's custom shop. Bourbon burst. Really pretty guitar. That fingerboard's outrageous. Normally aren't that dark. You kind of have to ask for that.
That's nice.
Lucked out on that one.
Great.
And then this Iconic is a one-off. Super cool. It's a perfect weight. It's probably like a little over 7 pounds. Aluminum guard, ash, raw. It's just grain filled. Feels really nice. And it's a great sounding guitar. Quarter sawn maple neck.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. It's just a really cool guitar from an independent builder out in California. So.
All right, we're gonna start with the longest scale length first, the typical Fender scale, and I'm just plugged straight into the front of this Morgan JS40. So yeah, here we go. It does fight you a little bit on the bends, the double stop bends. These are all 10s on these guitars, right?
Yes, 10 to 46, they're all NYXL.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a telly. If you've never played a telly, with these bends, you do sort of have to manhandle a Telecaster a little bit. You got to kind of really, really dig in. Mm-hmm. But that, I think, is part of the telly's charm, because you play it a little bit differently than a Les Paul.
Well, like you're doing the open note, open string type of thing, it seems to be, for me, easier to do on a longer scale guitar. So any of the kind of like slide pedal steel type of things seem to be easier for me to achieve for me on that kind of guitar.
Yeah. All right, Les Paul, here we go. So we've gone from 2 ends of the spectrum here. The long Fender scale straight to the short Gibson scale. And when you do that back to back, the differences are pretty noticeable.
I agree.
I mean, this like immediately, at least for me, makes me want to go straight to more of the long bends, higher bends.
I feel like too with shorter scale, and this isn't on the extreme section of short scale, these are just common. It's on the shorter side of common scales, but I do a lot more hammer-on, pull-off runs on shorter scale guitars like that, like Gibson scale guitars.
Right.
I feel like I can fly a little faster on those than I can on the 25.5.
Right, right. comparing the three back to back like that has actually shown me something. I've never done this before. I've never gone Fender, Gibson, PRS right in the middle. And this is cluing me into something about PRS guitars, but they do sit, in terms of feel and playability and string tension, it sits right between a Gibson and a Fender.
Yeah.
It really does.
And that was part of the design Paul was going after. And I can't speak for Paul, but I can a little bit here, that he was taking key ingredients from Leo and Ted McCarty, taking the things that were really great about the early Gibson and Fenders, but also trying to improve on issues they have. And the 24 3/4 inch scale on Les Paul does inherently make it a little more difficult to get the intonation right when you're using lighter gauge strings. Going to a 25-inch scale was just enough to pull out of that range where, yeah, they'll intonate just fine with 9s, really no question. All PRSs will. You know, probably with 8s, I don't know.
Yeah.
Haven't tried that on a PRS.
So why is that? Why does scale length affect the guitar's ability to intonate with strings?
Well, there's two things with that. The first one is that when you have more tension on the string, you're less likely to pull it sharp. Les Pauls tend to have bigger frets, right, than say like a vintage Fender. You know, so you have a bigger fret, less tension, you put 9s on it, and if you have the hand of a blacksmith, right, or the hand of me,
Yeah.
we tend to push down a little bit too hard, and it makes it go out of tune easier. So if you have a bigger gauge string, you don't notice that as much. 9s on a Les Paul's fairly light gauge string, shorter scaling, much more sensitive. And the other part of it is a physical limitation on the guitar itself. So the saddles only have so much travel, and the bridge isn't always exactly in the right place.
Right.
So you may run into actual physical limitations of the guitar being able to intonate, and you'll see people, and this goes both ways, but you'll see people actually flip saddles over to try to correct that problem.
I think some of the issue of people complaining about Les Pauls being out of tune all the time is if you're a heavy-handed player and if the intonation's not quite right with the shorter scaling, and if you're, it even happens on 10s, but especially if you're playing 9s, you're gonna knock that guitar out of tune really easily, especially down here in the first position, like this E major. You start to get that G sharp a little sharp, and now it sounds like the guitar's out of tune when really...
If this guitar had smaller frets on it, like not as high frets, it may not have some of those issues when you played it, or when I played it necessarily. Or same thing with a Fender, if it had huge frets on it. I mean, scalloping a Fender is something you see.
Yeah.
How often do you see scalloped Gibsons?
Never.
Right, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous anyway, but hey, if you like it, you like it.
All right, so your opinion, does scale length matter?
No. It matters in a lot of ways because it changes the feel of the guitar, it changes the tone subjectively and all that. But the reason it doesn't matter is because if you are inherently stuck that you need 24 3/4 scale length and that's where your brain is at, you'll never try guitars that fall outside of that spec, and you'll miss some opportunities to play a guitar that might be perfect for you. So no, it doesn't matter.
And I completely agree. It does not matter. In my experience of playing guitars and owning guitars for years, the scale length does have an appreciable difference in the feel and playability of the guitar, but that's not what makes the guitar good or bad to play, and that's not what affects the overall tone and response of the guitar. What it does do, at least for me, is change how I play the guitar. It changes what licks I choose to play, how I choose to play those licks. If a guitar is easier to bend on, I'm gonna do more bends versus something that's less easy. I'm gonna approach the guitar differently. But in the grand scheme of things, does the scale length prevent me or encourage me to buy a guitar? No, doesn't matter. So I want to know what your preferred scale length is in the comment section down below. Are you more of a Fender scale person, longer scale, or Gibson scale, which is shorter? Or are you more like me, which is doesn't really matter. You can kind of switch between them and play to that guitar. Let me know in the comments section down below. If you'd like to learn more about guitars and tone and feel and how to get the sound out of your head and through your speakers, I made a video course on that last year called the Tone Course, which is available via the link down below. You can also find my Nashville Number System course and a new video course that I'm working on right now that will be available very soon. So check that out, RhettShullGuitarCourses.com. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at RhettShull and subscribe here to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and click that bell icon to be notified when I'm posting new videos. So that's gonna do it for today's video. My name is Rhett Shull. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, there is no plan B.